After reading chapters 4 and 5 of the best practices, chapter 4 being the best practices in writing, and chapter 5 being the best practices in mathematics, I noticed that the connection between the two is that both teachers used the constructivist approach in teaching. Therefore, the students learned through discovery and self-guidance and scaffolding and peer review. So that actually eliminated passive learners. When you have passive learners, you find yourself going over the information in a repetitive process. But if they're more engaged, they're learning on their own, they're coming up with their own understanding, their own strategies, their own they're using their understanding in order to flourish, to get to that learning objective. Both teachers use the scaffolding process. They use collaboration. They use self-guided and peer review. And so, therefore, the students stayed engaged. The writing teacher used the scaffolding practices of line breaks, had the students model. Remember when we discussed line breaks in our prior lesson, the students said yes. But just to ensure that they understood, the teacher went over it again. She had a student model and explain where would you place this line break in your writing. She connected the words with that visual model of draw that line where you would create that line break. Collaboration happened in her class with the turn and talk, when she explained information and the students had the opportunity to actually discuss what she explained and what they understood. They had to turn and talk with each other to ensure that they understood each other, not just the teacher, but put it in their own words what they understood. The peer review was when the students actually wrote. The students had the opportunity to actually stop and read their paper aloud to someone if they were unsure if they were writing properly or if their writing was on the right track. If you're unsure, read it aloud to your peer. Let them review and kind of grade and tell you where your errors are and how you can improve your writing. The mathematics teacher, the scaffolding was the KWC chart. What do you know? What do you want to know? And what are the constraints of this lesson? If you're only given $10 and you can buy Tootsie Rolls and Hershey bars, what would your process or what would your outcome be given that constraint of just $10 to spend with no change? The discovery process happened when the students were able to create their possible outcomes, create their how many Tootsie Rolls they can get and how many Hershey's based on that information. The actual peer review then happened when she brought the students back together as one, as a whole group, asked them to show or hold up their examples or their combinations of Hershey bars and Tootsie Rolls, and asked them, are your examples the only examples that the possible outcomes with the constraints? Of course, the students said no, and then of course the teacher released the students again to come up with more outcomes. And let's create a table. Let's expand that by creating a table to show how many Tootsie Rolls and how many Hershey bars we can get with the $10. So the students began to see the pattern of the fact that you can trade in 2 for 1 within that table. The self-guidance, the collaboration in groups, the students had to work in groups with the time that was given, and they could then just complete their model and their table and their thinking as a whole, and the teacher was the facilitator, not the actual instructor. There's a big difference between the two. She was able to facilitate the class, facilitate the learning, and ensure that all students were actively engaged. It just made the entire lesson more enjoyable. So despite our time and our restrictions of high stakes assessment, we really need to take into consideration that students learn when we use the constructivist approach. If we continue to use the basic approach of direct teach and skill and drill, we're limiting our students' learning and our students' growth.